Hey friends, I'm Otis Gibbs, and this is Kevin Harrington. He used to work for the Beatles, and he's going to tell us a story about what it was like to live with George Harrison.
We were in EMI, Abbey Road as it's called now. I'm the old school, so it's still EMI as far as I'm concerned. Just one night, George just walked into the control room, because they all came into the control room at sort of various times. It could be 6:30 to 7 o'clock, depending on when they were all scheduled to start, because George is coming from way off, John's coming from way off, Paul lives just over the road, and Ringo's just in London. So there's always like about a 20, 25-minute gap. And so that time it's always, okay, I make them tea, get them coffee and all of that, because I've already set the studio up. That's done. I'm just waiting now for them. And George walks in and just, "Hey, Kevin, I've just moved into this house, this big house," he said. "And there's only me, Patty, and Terry Doran, or Terry. Terry Doran was his assistant. And it's really big. Do you want to come and move in for a bit just to make up the numbers?" I said, "Yeah," because he never said no. I said, "Yeah." He said, "Okay, well, tomorrow just bring a bag and change your clothes, and we'll go to my place tomorrow night." And so next day, got a bag, and at the end of the session, sort of did what I had to do. And then we drove out to George's place, and so this has got to be about 2 o'clock in the morning, and out to Henley-on-Thames. We go through these big gates, it's just like, ooh, okay. And up this drive. And then in the headlights, there's just this Gothic mansion, it's just like, it was something out of the Hammer horror film, it was just like, wow, and then we go through the big doors and enter this massive room, and there's like gallery around, but it's all dark because there's no bulbs, there's no light bulbs, it was that primitive there that there was nothing really, a few light bulbs just so they could see into the kitchen. And my first night I was sleeping in, they put me up in the library, it's called, right? It was a small room basically on the ground floor off of the hall. And so Terry had got me a mattress and a sleeping bag and a pillow. And I just sort of, because I was like really stoned, in those days we did get really stoned. And I just went to bed and, after a couple of drinks and stuff, and it was, Henley-on-Thames is down there, but there's all these big old trees, but they're lit by the light of street lights from the, so they're just like big shadows. And that night it was just windy. And so these things are doing like this, but on the walls, there's all of these shadows going backwards and forwards, and, and it's like, here I am in a Hammer house of horror, and I've got all of these, and I was just like, oh, and it was kind of weird. It really was just, and that was it. Woke up the next morning. Yeah, an amazing house. And it was owned by some nuns before George bought it. And so they just stripped everything. As soon as they left, they took all the bulbs and everything else. And the grounds were just so overcrowded, and everything was a mess, basically. And so it was a question of just, okay, doing whatever Terry or Patty or George wanted to do, whether it's sweeping up, putting light bulbs in, washing windows, and when it got a bit warmer, I think we were out in the garden a lot, just chopping and hacking and cutting grass. And yeah, it was a wonderful time. Richard DeLillo, the photographer, he came up to take some photos for a weekend. And at that point, George had some little Honda monkey bikes, which we used to bomb around. It was like 24 acre estate. So we used to bomb around, just having fun. One day, Richard couldn't stop it. He couldn't stop his bike. So he went up this little ramp, and there's a little stone wall, and he just hit it. And in my head now, I can still see Richard just going, because he was a tall lad. He was about 6'2", 6'3" or something. He was just a tall lad. I just remember Richard going, and he broke his collarbone, which is not very good for a photographer. I think he stayed at George's for about another week while he recovered. So, but it was just a fun time. I mean, I remember Clapton turned up with Ginger Baker, right? Just one day. And Ginger Baker sort of must have been on acid because he's like, fucking hell, man. Wow. And it was just like, priceless, absolutely priceless. I took him down to the caves underneath and stuff. It was, the grotto. It was an incredible, I think I was there for about 4.5 months or so, 5 months. And then the Krishnas came. And so my presence wasn't needed because the house was now full. So I just moved back to London. And but an amazing few months, I must admit.
There's a quote in Liverpool airport from George, and I'm going to bastardize it, but it says something to the effect of, we're in the biggest band in the world. We had more money than God, but it means absolutely nothing if you don't have your health and happiness and family. Something to that effect. And I love that as a window into George. Was that what he was?
Yeah, George was a humanitarian. He was lovely. He really was lovely. I felt an affection for George, mainly because when I first started with him on the Double White album, I sort of walked in and my second night, the first night I was invited in just by Mal, because I'd done this shopping thing. And so the night I actually did start with them, I'm like hiding, sort of standing behind this box on a stand, which I now know is called a monitor. I didn't know that then, And George was sitting on the floor just, playing the guitar away on it. And everybody's sort of getting their stuff together. And he just said, Kevin, come over, sit down. Tell me all about yourself. And so that kind of that chilled me out a lot. I was still, a bit daunted about what I was let myself in for, But it was that was the start of just easing into the job with George. So I also found out that during that chat, he used to ride around delivering meat for a butcher's on a bike with a basket on the front. Well, I used to do the same in London, but for a grocer's doing loaves of bread to little hotels around the West End in the mornings, so before I went to school. So we had kind of that in common. So I always felt more affinity with George, and so, because he was such a nice man, I did love him to bits. It was sad actually leaving, but because by then the Beatles had broken up anyway, but it was right. It was in the middle of his album, All Things Must Pass, and so that was kind of a gut wrench to not finish that album. Yeah.
Did you get to hear him playing any of those songs around the house, or were you?
No, not really. No, no. The house really wasn't like that at that point. I'm sure he must have been playing somewhere, but it was such a big house. And I was kind of working anyway, wasn't just loafing. It was, I'd be out for 6 hours or so, weeding or, whatever, sweeping up, doing whatever, So there was really none of that. It wasn't until he got his studio together.
Did you feel like he was creatively driven right then?
Oh, yeah.
You never know where somebody's headspace is.
No, that's right. That's the thing. It's it's in there. How it's going to come out. You've got no idea until it comes out. So you just let the musician get on with what he's got to do. And you just do what you've got to do, and eventually it'll come right.
If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more like it, subscribe to my channel and tell me down below what your favorite George Harrison song is, and I'll see you somewhere down the road. Much love to you.